Welcome to This Week in Wrestling History.
All right, welcome everyone to episode 13 of This Week in Wrestling History. As always, we're your hosts, Ryan and Jacob. So what's going on this week?
Well, we're going to talk about Survivor Series this week.
Yeah, this week we got Survivor Series 1997.
And we're just past the atrocity of a pay-per-view that was Crown Jewel.
I don't know what you're talking about. The last thing I saw from the WWE was Evolution, and it was really, really good.
Evolution was good. I watched Crown Jewel.
I don't know what that is. I don't know Crown Royal. Isn't that a rum?
No, not Crown Royal. Crown Jewel. One of the worst pay-per-views I have ever seen.
I'm not at all surprised. I absolutely refuse to watch this. I refuse to have anything to do with this. I think it was a dumb move politically. I think it was a dumb move in the eyes of... For so many reasons, it was a dumb move in my book.
Yeah, and a lot of the matches were dumb moves, like Shane McMahon winning the World Cup. The dumbest thing I've ever heard.
Because we need the heel GM to match up with the other heel GM.
Yeah. Yep, makes sense. Brock winning the Universal belt. Dumbest thing I've ever seen.
Pretty sure we all saw that coming, unfortunately.
Well, here's my only thing with it. If they end up putting the belt on Braun at WrestleMania and giving Braun his major WrestleMania moment, I'm okay with Brock winning it now.
That's cool and all. That's 6 months away.
I know.
We're going to have the WWE Universal title just go AWOL again for another 6 months?
Probably.
That belt isn't...
It's worth nothing.
It's worthless. It means nothing.
Why would I want that belt compared to the WWE title that AJ has been defending for over a year now?
Absolutely no idea. The only upside of that whole thing is, cool, that means Seth is the number one belt holder for singles titles on Raw?
Yep.
All right, well, that's fine.
And what was the other match that I rolled my eyes? Oh, DX versus the Brothers of Destruction. These guys getting an hour. They actually got an hour, including their entrances. It was the slowest paced match I have ever seen.
If the total age of performers in that ring isn't over collectively 200, it's damn close. Mm-hmm. There's no need for people that age to be doing that stuff, as is evident by Triple H getting hurt 5 minutes into the match.
Yeah, torn pectoral muscle is going to be out with surgery. And sounds like his match with Batista at Mania 35 is off.
And whoops, we botched and ripped Kane's mask off in the middle of the match.
Ugh.
And Shawn's bald and basically saying, I haven't done this for 8 years, and if I do it again in 8 years, it's too soon.
Yep.
And there doesn't sound like anything good came of this.
Nope. Bad pay-per-view. Didn't like it. Don't watch any of it. On to Survivor Series 1997.
All right. So let's just jump right into it.
November 9th, 1997.
All right. So Survivor Series 1997 from Montreal, Quebec, Canada.
Yeah, this was a pretty ruckus crowd.
Yeah, so we're definitely into the Attitude Era. The crowd really hot. Ring announcing all done in French.
Which threw me off a little bit.
It was a little weird at first. You kind of get used to it, but it's definitely... I was expecting French and then English.
But just French.
Just French.
Yeah.
So that was a thing. So this actually was a little bit of still trying to hold on to that Survivor Series tradition of the 4-on-4 elimination matches. Definitely some of them seem to be kind of stretching to make sense and were more just to get more people onto the card, it seemed.
Which, I mean, if you're one of your biggest pay-per-views of the year, because at this point they're still doing the like major big four and then all in your houses.
Right.
Get some guys on the card to get a payday.
Right. It's not terribly offensive or anything. It's just, it seemed a little contrived in places.
Yeah, there was quite a few stretches for the storylines here, such as the first match.
Yep. So the first match up is a 4-on-4 Survivor Series elimination match, which if you're not familiar with Survivor Series, what it is, it's 2 teams of 4, sometimes 5, depending on what year it is. Teams of 4 going against each other, and it's elimination. So it's not just the first team to get pins loses. Someone gets pinned, they're out. Their team now has 3 people. So now it's 3 on 4, and so on and so forth until only one team has any people remaining. Oh, one thing I actually did want to point out that was kind of weird about this in general is Survivor Series was November 9th, barely the second week of November.
Yeah, usually it's been significantly later.
Right. So originally it was the Wednesday before Thanksgiving.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which, grand scheme of things, probably a bad time to have a pay-per-view.
Right.
But definitely much later in the month than the 9th.
Yeah, this is very early for the normal Survivor Series. I mean, even now they start doing it quite a bit later on in the month.
Yeah, definitely. So, anywho, first match is the team of the New Blackjacks and the Headbangers versus the Godwins and the New Age Outlaws.
Yeah, so this was JBL's second bad cowboy gimmick.
Right, this is JBL's second bad cowboy gimmick. The original was Justin Hawk Bradshaw.
Yep.
And now it's Blackjack Bradshaw teaming with Blackjack, not Mulligan, Blackjack Wyndham. So that's Barry Windham.
Yep.
From way back in our old days. Barry Windham, I think we had talked about him before.
He's had to have come up at some point by now.
Right. So Barry Windham was just a really decent wrestler from down south. Long time kind of
Southern Territory guy.
right, high mid card, sometimes drifting into the main event in WCW/NWA. Would have a few runs in WWF with just awful gimmicks. At one point in the early 90s, he was the Stalker and was just dressed up in camo and good worker, not a great character, not a great talker necessarily.
Yeah, he never did much in WWF.
No, so it was him and JBL back with his just Bradshaw gimmick, both with just jet black dyed hair, big black mustaches. Like, they look like someone from the 20s that's going to go like, bully, let's give him a what for.
Except they have cowboy boots on.
Yeah, except they're cowboys too. So
And
there's
then you
that.
have them teaming with the Headbangers, Mosh and Thrasher. Need I say more?
What a just random pairing, because I don't think the Blackjacks were necessarily faces.
No, but they were kind of against the New Age Outlaws because the Outlaws had come out and essentially
Stolen these hats.
Yeah, and they were like one team after another targeting teams and messing with them at some point.
Yeah, that was kind of the New Age Outlaws shtick here. They had not yet jumped into DX, so they were just kind of, hey, jerks.
Right. And this is before we get the promo at the beginning of every
match,
they
yeah.
have. And then you have the Godwins, who we've talked about a couple of times.
Yep, we've
now.
definitely done a few rounds on them, so definitely feel free to look back and hear some more about the Godwins. But this was after Mark Canterbury, Henry O. Godwin, had broken his neck against Legion of Doom. A little bit before they rebranded themselves as Jeff Jarrett's bodyguards, known as Southern Justice. But that was actually what the New Age Outlaws said when they all walked out together. It was like, this is Southern Justice right here.
Right.
So this was probably real close to them transitioning to that new
gimmick.
Yeah, the new gimmick of Southern hitmen instead of being pig farmers.
Yeah, I guess.
Good change, I would say. But
Yeah. Overall, this was one of the longer matches on the card, which is a little upsetting because it was not good.
No, it was just lots of kind of brawling and chunking around and meh.
Yeah, and some goofy stuff by the Outlaws off in the corner, but that was pretty much it.
Yeah, ends up with just the Outlaws being the only 2 survivors from their team.
Yep.
Getting the win. So, yeah, again, longer, but not really much to it. So, meh.
Yep. So then we jump on to the next match of the card, which is another 4-on-4 Survivor Series elimination match.
So I think there's a total of 4 Survivor Series matches for the whole night.
Correct.
Yeah. And then this is the second of them. They front load the card with them and then have one more a little bit later on, but mostly they front loaded them and then got to the good stuff in a little bit.
Right. So the next one is the Truth Commission, which is the Interrogator, the Jackal, Recon, and Sniper.
Yep, and they face the team of the Disciples of Apocalypse, 8-Ball Chains.
With a Z.
Yeah, with a G, not change, as in coins. Crush and Skull. So, I liked this for one reason.
That we saw Don Callis with hair.
Well, not that we saw him, that he's in the match, gets eliminated like first. He's out within the first 2 minutes of the match. Then he goes and jumps on commentary.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the first times I think I've ever heard him on commentary aside from what he's doing in New Japan. And it added a good little bit to the story of this.
Don Callis' place in wrestling is definitely behind a microphone, not necessarily in the ring.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And it was the most impressive thing about this match, honestly. So the Truth Commission, not great at wrestling.
No.
The Disciples of Apocalypse, not great at wrestling. The most entertaining thing to say about the match was Don Callis, a.k.a. the Jackal, was the smallest guy in the match, and Don Callis is like 6'2", 6'3".
Yeah. I mean,
he looked small, but he is not a small guy.
When you have the interrogator in the ring who went on to do a couple of things in acting, as far as I can remember.
Yeah, he definitely became more known probably for acting. I think he was recently in... Oh, don't tell me. He was in something recently, but...
He was in Deadpool 2.
That's what he was in.
He was also in... He's been in a bunch of TV shows like Once Upon a Time and Haven.
Yeah, like if you need a big dude... Oh, he was in Sherlock Holmes, the first one, I believe, with Robert Downey Jr. Because I remember a clip going around saying there was an interview with Robert Downey Jr. on one of the late night talk shows saying where the interrogator, a.k.a. Kurgan, a.k.a. I believe his name is Robert something. Anyways, he accidentally punched Robert Downey Jr. in the face, but just barely caught him. And Robert Downey Jr. was going around saying, like, yeah, he felt worse about it than I did. So, all things being what they are, it seems like a good dude, I guess. And good for him for still having a career outside of wrestling, which probably prolonged the amount of time he could earn money with being a dude his size.
Oh yeah. I mean, when you need... It seems like all of his characters have been the big, gruff guy that doesn't have a lot of lines that just beats somebody up the entire time.
Yeah, he's natively a French speaker, so his English is probably also still a little rough, even though I'm sure he's conversational in it, but it probably still sounds a little bit. Yeah. Of all the people in the match, the only thing really to say is, again, about Kurgan the Interrogator, is he would go on to be in the Oddities that the next stable Jackal would have. It was the team of Kurgan and, I want to say Golga was the name that they used. It was Earthquake, a.k.a. John Tenta, in a mask. And he would carry around a big stuffed Cartman doll. They would come out. It would be the two of them, another really super huge guy that I think they called like Giant Silva.
Yep.
And Luna Vachon. Originally, it was with Jackal, a.k.a. Don Callis. Eventually, Don Callis would get kicked out of the group, and the Insane Clown Posse would manage them.
Yeah, is that when Shaggy 2-Dope steps in and Violent J?
Yep.
They also a part of the same group was Sable and George Steele.
Oh, I forgot about that for a brief period of time. Okay.
Yep.
But that was actually a really interesting gimmick to me. I'm sure I don't know if they ever actually even had a pay-per-view match for us to cover at any point in time. It was a weird stable.
Yeah.
And I remember one episode of like Saturday Night Heat or Shotgun Saturday Night or something. Jackal comes out with this lady from, I think it was like Hank the Angry Dwarf and some woman from the Howard Stern show.
Oh, no.
Who had just the biggest chest in the world. And he came out and the shtick was basically these people followed him because he was kind of doing that whole David Koresh kind of cult leader type thing.
Oh, JR references.
Yeah, they reference that a little bit.
Time.
And his line was, give the people what they want. And he was trying to show kind of what a gross show people were kind of looking for at that time, which
Mm.
it was interesting political commentary in a world that you don't normally see good political commentary from.
Right.
So that was kind of cool. Anyways,
The
this match was awful.
Yeah, not
And
so much.
People were hitting finishing moves such as the sidewalk slam.
Ugh.
That was Interrogator's finisher. So,
Ugh.
anyways, match wasn't great. The commentary from Don Callis was really good,
Yeah.
but everything else pretty forgettable.
All right. Next match we have Team USA, which is Goldust, Mark Marrow, Vader, and the debuting Steve Blackman.
Yeah, this was actually his very first match. He had only shown up the Monday before.
He was, quote unquote, the fan who came in to save Vader as he was getting beat up by Team Canada, which consisted of the British Bulldog, Doug Furness, Jim Neidhart, and Phil LaFon.
Yes.
Right?
Yep, Phil LaFon. Furness and LaFon were a tag team from, I want to say USWA or Mid-South. They had been around since at least the early 90s.
They seem to be pretty decent from watching this match.
This was their second run, I believe, in the WWF. They're really good wrestlers. They have no personality whatsoever.
Yeah, I could see that.
They're the kind of people where you hear JR talking a lot about their collegiate days,
Mm,
and you know that's kind of the kiss of death for anyone's personality.
yep.
When JR starts going into your background about what you did in college, you are done.
Yeah, especially around this time because, I mean, this is pre-Kurt Angle, so we're not...
Though,
Huge.
funnily enough, Team USA, the music they come out to was
Is
Kurt
Kurt
Angle's
Angle's.
music.
Well, because it was originally the Patriot was supposed to be on the team, and that was his music
Oh,
first.
yes.
And the Patriot ended up getting quote unquote beaten up by Team Canada, so that's why they brought in Steve Blackman.
Wasn't he in rehab or something?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was unfortunate.
Overall, not a bad match. I mean, Steve Blackman ends up getting counted out as the first person out because he doesn't know the rules of wrestling.
Yeah, he's too used to street fighting.
Yeah.
They had a couple things going on this time of WWF where they're really trying to bring in some like legitimate kind of shoot fighters, being Ken Shamrock, Dan Severn would eventually come in, and Steve Blackman kind of got rolled into that whole thing where, hey, look, legitimate tough martial artist guys. Except Steve Blackman isn't a legitimate martial artist. I mean, I'm sure he knows martial artists. He's a wrestler.
You kind of have that now with you have Ronda Rousey show up, but then you have Sonya Deville
Yeah.
showing up and being the MMA girl, and Ronda shows up and tosses her around like a rag doll.
Yeah, it's like, hey, this is the MMA girl, except here's the real person everyone knows from the MMA world.
Right.
Oops.
So overall, that one wasn't a bad match. They definitely role reversed because the Monday before this, Team Canada was the heels and Team USA were the faces.
Well, being in Canada will do that.
Oh yeah, as soon as because Team Canada came out to Brett's music, as soon as his music hits, it was the loudest pop of the night.
Oh,
until
yeah, it's
later.
crazy.
So next match is Kane with Paul Bearer against Mankind, and
So-
this was Kane's first match,
Right. Kane's debut, because he just showed up. If you go back and listen to our original, I'm going to say Hell in a Cell, but it wasn't Hell in a Cell because it was on In Your House Bad Blood.
Yes.
In Your House Bad Blood was the previous month. First ever Hell in a Cell match. That's where Kane first shows up. Between then and now, he'd been walking out every Monday night and destroying some poor jobber in the middle of Raw.
Yep. And not even having a match against them. He just walks out in the middle of a match.
Yeah, he would
and
just
beats
interrupt a
people
match
up.
and decimate everyone in the match. Also, during this time, which kind of was setting up this match, was Mick Foley had been... Mankind had been managed by Paul Bearer for a long time. We're doing the Three Faces of Foley. Mick Foley's getting away from Paul Bearer during this time. Paul Bearer talks some smack to Mick Foley, says, "You were nothing. You were never anything real to me."
You were just a pebble.
Which I don't get that,
Nope.
but okay, sure. It really offended Mick Foley.
Overall, it was a glorified 10-minute squash match.
It was a little bit better than that, I thought. Mick Foley Mankind got a lot of work in.
Yeah, but
Kane kept sitting up out of it. I mean, it was it was kind of a precursor to the hardcore division because
Yeah, that's
people were
true.
going through a ton of tables. There was chairs involved.
Yeah, they had the spot where Kane tosses Mankind semi-choke slam from the ring apron through the announcer table.
Yep. Took out the Spanish announce table for keeping up that track record.
Yep.
My biggest takeaway on this match actually was it was actually really interesting seeing the Kane character kind of being the opposite of the Undertaker character, using a lot of the same offensive moves but being meaner about it, so to
Right.
speak. The weirdest one I noted, and I thought it was just a cool little thing. After the tombstone with the Undertaker, he would pin the guy by crossing their arms over them like you would see them in a casket. Kane, when he pinned Mankind, spread his arms out to the side, almost like crucified style, but
Yep.
it was just cool that it was the opposite of what the Undertaker does. So kind of like, hey, look, these guys are kind of like the mirror image of each other.
Yeah, and it was kind of interesting to have the dark red lighting the entire time, and
I don't know if that was intentional or a screw up.
it seemed intentional because of how long they kept it on.
Right, yeah. So it was about a 9-10 minute match, and Kane's red lighting, how the lights go down and then come up red, they stayed red the entire time. Normally when he does the little four corners of fire, pyro, that kicks up the house lights.
Yep.
Not here. It stayed red the whole time.
It was interesting to kind of see that happen, and it went back to the kind of creepy gimmick that Undertaker was going with, where it was like the supernatural stuff. It was entertaining.
Yeah, it was definitely different. It was, for its time, it was fine because it wasn't cheesy, spooky. It was like kind of legitimately like, what is going on with this guy?
Especially because Kane was massive compared to most of the guys in
Yeah.
WWE at the time.
All right. So then up next was the final 4-on-4 Survivor Series elimination match. It was our team of Ken Shamrock, Ahmed Johnson, and Hawk and Animal, the Legion of Doom, versus the Nation of Domination, Farouk, D'Lo Brown, Kama Mustafa, and Rocky Maivia.
For those of you that don't know, Kama Mustafa, a.k.a. The Godfather.
A.K.A. Papa Shango.
Yep.
A.K.A. Quang. No, Savio Vega was Quang. There was another character I thought that he played that was some masked guy. I might be wrong. I think I'm...
The Soul Taker.
No. I think
Rocky Las Vegas.
No, I think I may have been confusing him with Rikishi and doing the Sultan gimmick.
Okay.
Okay. Anywho.
This was not the worst Survivor Series match I had seen, but it definitely wasn't the best.
No, it was... So let's actually go back a minute. The finish of the Team Canada versus Team USA was Goldust decided to walk out on his team, and right after Vader eliminated either Furnace or LaFon, whichever one was the later one in there, the refs were checking on the guy that had just been eliminated, getting him out of the ring. British Bulldog grabs the ring bell, cracks Vader in the back with it, gets the pin. We see almost the exact same finish to this match, except that it doesn't work out so well for the heel.
So they kind of did the same thing, except it was Rocky Maivia this time. And
Rock grabs a chair, cracks Ken Shamrock in the back of the head with it.
Yep. And ends up turning around. Shamrock essentially just turns around and drops him into it was a crossface, right?
No. He went for the pin after that. Just Shamrock kicked out after 2. They tussled back and forth for a little bit, and Shamrock ends up getting the ankle lock on him.
That's what it was. Yeah, it wasn't the worst one I've seen, wasn't the best one. My thing with the whole match was, and I don't know if this is just Shamrock being Shamrock, he seemed very sloppy the entire match. The most crisp thing he did in the match was the belly-to-belly suplex that he hits.
Yeah, he's not great. I don't think he ever has been great, which is really weird because he was a pro wrestler before he was a UFC fighter.
Right. He just never seemed like he cared enough to like make the matches look good.
Yeah, I can see that. Other takeaways for me on this? Really weird seeing the people's elbow without it getting like the finish or something.
Oh man, people were hating The Rock during this.
Oh, this was in prime we don't care for the Rock time.
Yeah, it was
He was still Rocky Maivia. The Rock hadn't quite come around yet, I don't believe.
so he looked like The Rock, but still had Rocky Maivia's name, and
Right, he hadn't been referring to himself in the third person as The Rock yet.
also Ahmed Johnson is awful.
Yeah, he's bad.
He's not good at all.
He's injury prone. He's sloppy. It was cool that he had a Tiger Bomb as his finisher, but that was about the most you could say for him.
That Tiger Bomb compared to Tony Storm's Storm Zero Tiger Bomb it's nothing.
Oh, definitely not. I liked him as a kid because I didn't know any better, and I just thought it was cool.
Right.
But looking back, like, I don't know what we were doing here. It wasn't good.
No. All right, so the next match we have is Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Owen Hart for the Intercontinental title. Just after, this is what, 3 months later?
So at SummerSlam is when the botched pile driver happened.
Yep, Stone Cold is broken neck, so Owen Hart is still doing the... what was
Owen
it?
316, I just broke your neck.
Yep. And,
The crowd was chanting, break his neck again.
yeah, it was a little disheartening.
Yeah, crowds were super bloodthirsty back at this time.
So Stone Cold up until this point had been going around and doing pretty much anything and everything to make sure that Owen kept the IC belt
Yup,
so that he could come back and take it off of him.
exactly. They said that the only way this match was going to happen was if Stone Cold signed a, what was it, no, like it was some.
It was
dumb-
essentially a no, like you can't sue WWE
yeah, it was
for
like a no
getting hurt.
liability clause, which
Yeah.
was like, and they had like the dumbest term for it, and they were just trying to really build it up as the doctors all said no, Stone Cold is doing this against everyone's wishes, yada yada, which I've seen that work before, and it's all fine and well, but I don't know. It just felt a little weird and tacked on at this point. They were just trying to build up as how much of a badass Stone Cold is.
Right, which, I mean, to be honest, out of everybody on that roster, Stone Cold doesn't need that.
Right. He does it well enough himself. We don't need the few extra dumb little stipulations here and there.
Exactly. This match lasts all of 5 minutes.
Yeah, I'm surprised if it was even that. It felt like shorter. I'm certain this was literally the soonest any doctor would sign off on Stone Cold being back in the ring. And they were like, no, this is not going far. I don't think, did Owen ever get any offense in?
Nope. Stone Cold did not take any bumps whatsoever. I mean, aside from maybe a couple of punches.
Yeah, maybe just like some random like beat down from behind type stuff, like some clubbing forearms to the back. Like,
Right.
definitely not hitting his neck.
No.
And yeah, it was completely lopsided. The finish kind of came out of nowhere, it seemed like.
Yeah, there really wasn't much build up to it. I mean, aside from Stone Cold dropping a stunner.
Right. I think what they were going for was a callback to the SummerSlam match, and it looks like they were supposed to have tried to go for that same tombstone spot again.
Mm-hmm.
But it looks like they had botched the tombstone spot, and they just went right into the finish, which was Stone Cold kick wham stunner.
Yep.
So it felt really weird because it felt like they wanted to give that spot a little bit more time to breathe and a little bit of, oh no, he's going to do it again. He's going to paralyze Stone Cold.
He's actually going to break his neck like the crowd is chanting for.
Right, but then Stone Cold would slip out of it, kick wham stunner. Big fanfare for everyone not in Canada.
No, not in Canada. It would have been booze everywhere.
Well, there wasn't some Stone Cold fans.
Yeah, but the minute
They were definitely the minority, but
the minute Owen's music played, it was all Team Canada all over again.
yeah. All right, that brings us to the main event.
Something happened with this match, didn't it?
Yeah, this one went goofy. Should we just stop that now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
We should actually talk like we know what happened.
Right.
So
So obviously it's the Montreal Screwjob.
yes. So we were kind of hoping to just run through the card, talk about the rest of the stuff on the match, because again, stuff actually happened
Yeah,
on this
like,
card.
The first match for Kane isn't nothing.
And I mean, as much as you may dislike him, the first actual match of Steve Blackman, who was a multi-time hardcore champion.
Yeah,
like
he did things. He had programs on the show. He wasn't no one.
I mean, isn't he the guy that threw Shane McMahon off of the rafter or off the
Yes,
scaffold?
yes, he was the one that was responsible for that. You're correct.
He did things.
Yeah,
So the rest of this card wasn't necessarily nothing.
right. It had the New Age Outlaws doing their shticks, and it had the Nation and
Stone Cold getting
DOA,
the
unfortunately.
yeah, Stone Cold getting his IC title back.
Yeah,
So
which would then eventually get, I believe, get chucked in the river when he and The Rock would start feuding.
Yep.
So, yeah, I think Survivor Series 97 gets known for one thing and one thing alone, and there was more to it than that.
yeah, I mean, granted, this one thing is pretty intense.
Possibly, besides the formation of the NWO, possibly the biggest thing to happen in wrestling.
Yeah, I would say so.
I mean, if it's not the biggest, it's easily top 3, top 5.
I would easily go top 3.
Yeah.
But so for those of you that don't know, the Montreal Screwjob was an event that happened that kind of screwed Bret Hart out of his WWF title because he was about to leave for WCW.
So essentially, about the best I could explain it is we all know wrestling is scripted, predetermined, whatever term you want to use for it. We're watching a scripted piece of entertainment. On occasion, things will go wrong for whatever reasons, and things become unscripted. Whether it's someone gets hurt in the middle of the ring, someone just gets upset with someone else and they start throwing real punches at each other. For whatever reason, sometimes things stop being scripted.
And it happens a lot more than you think it does, or a lot more than it probably should.
Right. And this is kind of an unprecedented level because it was the main person behind the company and one of the top stars doing it premeditatedly to the other top star in the company.
Right.
To the champion.
So at this point, Bret Hart was going to WCW because the contract that he had signed with WWF was a lot less money.
No.
And
So what had happened, he had signed a ridiculous 12-year, $20 million or some crazy amount of time, some crazy amount of money.
that was the second one after they reworked it. He had signed a contract that had then been reworked into that 20-year
Yeah.
executive deal.
Right. So originally, because of kind of the competition between WWF and WCW at the time, WCW was bleeding WWF dry on money.
Because WCW at this point was in a spot where they were leading the ratings and they were
Backed by a whole ton of Ted Turner's money.
right.
When the whole WWF WCW thing really started heating up, WWF went and tried to lock down a lot of their talent into more concrete contracts, which hadn't really existed at the time, which is how a lot of the talent was able to be stolen by WCW. So they went through and renegotiated a lot of contracts, especially with the top end guys. Bret Hart, being their toppest end, longest going guys, got an incredible deal.
Yeah, he got this deal that was going to be for 20 years or something like that. That was going to
It would have ended last year.
yeah. It would have kept him as a performer, and then once he was done being a performer,
He would have transitioned into an office executive talent.
yeah. And Vince McMahon essentially had to break that contract because it was too much money. He couldn't pay it.
Yeah, Vince basically went up to Bret and said, "I'm sorry, they're bleeding me dry. I can't afford to pay you this. What are we going to do about that?"
And Bret decided that he was going to go to WCW.
Which Vince understood, and he had basically said, "I'm happy to do whatever I can to try to get you as much money from them as we can for you. I just can't give you this much money."
And it was something that Bret didn't want to do. He didn't want to go to WCW. He was, at the time, Bret was hoping he could be essentially WWF's version of Sting.
Right.
Their longtime guy who stays with the company and does what they need to do, but he had a family that he had to take care
basically starting at his career with just that one company, well, his big-time career.
Right.
And like you said, he just wanted to be with that one company. He felt loyal. He just wanted to be able to take care of his family and was basically being told, all those plans you may have been making, all of this stuff, can't happen.
Right.
We can't do it. If you want to try to go there to get more money, to get that money that you were promised, we're going to do what we can for you. Well, maybe not everything.
Right.
So at this point in time, as is well documented, Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart do not get along. I'm almost hesitant to say they hated each other. I mean, they clearly did. But the problem was almost more that they just didn't respect each other because they were just such different people.
Right. Bret was the guy who his heart was 100% into wrestling, and he was the guy who was going to train wrestling. He was going to focus on wrestling, and he wasn't in it for the money at the time. He was in it to be a wrestler.
And he also took it very seriously. He was just very the Hart family obviously is very well known throughout wrestling history. He takes it very seriously. It's where a lot of his sense of self comes from. It's just he takes it as a very personal point of pride.
Yeah, I'm sure if you were to ask, Bret Hart is more a wrestler than he is anything else in the world.
I think kind of the best way I can put this is to think about actors. Bret Hart is kind of more like Daniel Day-Lewis.
Yeah.
Very much gets into those roles, takes them very seriously, and tries to put himself in the shoes of the character he's playing, and just very much wants a lot of gravitas and respect around what he's doing, because he's doing everything in his being to do this thing well.
And then on the flip side, you have Shawn Michaels,
who, amazing athlete, great talent in the ring, but also wanted to live life to its fullest at the time.
That's what you want to call it.
He was out doing a lot of drugs, seeing a lot of women, and enjoying the lifestyle that being a pro wrestler afforded him.
Yeah, he was living the limelight at the time.
Which, not besides the recklessness and self-destructive kind of undertones of that whole thing, nothing wrong with, like, you can do that sort of thing, and if you're the only real victim in the whole thing, there's nothing terribly wrong with it, I suppose. But the fact that that sort of lifestyle never really does that and always kind of leaves a wake of destruction.
Right. So they come out to have this match, and Bret's worried that something's going to happen because he doesn't want to...
Well, backtrack that a little bit even. So this is a very convoluted thing, and there's so much information that Bret didn't want to lose the belt to Shawn in Canada. He, again, very prideful, so that was kind of his point of contention here. I don't want to lose to this guy that I don't think respects me, and I sure as hell don't want to do it in Canada, my home country, that looks at me as essentially a national hero.
Right.
Which I'm not sure I agree with, but I certainly understand.
And the original plan from what Vince McMahon told Bret Hart is that he would retain the belt at Survivor Series.
Yep, and then the next night on Raw, you would surrender it.
He would either surrender it or they were going to have him drop it in a match against somebody else.
Right.
So Bret was okay with that, but he started to think that something was a little fishy about the whole thing.
So that's kind of how things sat from Bret's perspective. On the flip side is Vince's perspective, where they, probably the year before, in one of the more embarrassing moments for them, lost their women's champion, Alundra Blaze, who we just talked about at Evolution, which that was her first match back with the company.
Yeah.
It took them a long time to forgive what she did, which is she showed up on Monday Nitro with the WWF women's belt and dropped it in a garbage can.
Yep. So Vince was a little worried that this was going to happen again. He didn't want his top title to walk out the door.
Right, which at the time, women's wrestling in WWF was a bit of a joke anyways.
Yeah.
But having any of your championship belts walked out on your competition's TV show and chucked in the garbage is a pretty big hit.
It's not good for business.
And as bad as it was with the women's belt, which was kind of a belt at the time, having your world title done that with would be a travesty.
It's literally the top belt in the company. Still is the top belt in the company.
I mean, honestly, it's the top belt in wrestling.
Right.
If you have the top belt in wrestling get chucked in the garbage on someone else's TV show, that hurts a lot.
Yeah. There could have been almost no coming back from that if that had happened.
Right.
And Vince, rightly so, was worried.
Yeah, he was afraid Brett would not do business properly. He wouldn't go along with the plan.
Which, if anybody knows Brett, he's pretty decent with the business like we were talking about. He takes this very seriously.
Of anyone that I don't think you would have to worry about, it would be Brett. Would I be willing to bet my multi-million-dollar company on that? I don't know. That's asking an awful lot of trust from someone that I just kind of screwed. Because Vince did just have to go back on his word to this guy.
Yeah. So we get into the match. And
Well, I'm going to keep stopping here because before the match even starts, it's weird.
Yeah, so let's start with the entrances.
Exactly.
So we have first out is Shawn Michaels, who's the European champion. He comes.
So the cameras start back in the locker rooms, which didn't really happen back then.
This was before Goldberg had his walkout entrances with the security guards and all that.
Right.
So it shows Brett or Shawn walk out of a room, and he audibly says, "I don't even know where I'm going right now. What's happening? Are we doing this?" And Triple H is there with him. Chyna's there with him.
Rick Rude is there.
Which, again, this hadn't happened before. The camera stopped at the curtain.
Yeah, so you see them walking through the backstage area through the gorilla position, which is kind of where all of the producers and the executives sit, kind of right behind the curtain that everyone walks out from. They walk through that. You see Shawn walk into the entranceway to go out into the arena, and then we cut back to the ringside cameras that show him walking out when his music hits.
Yep. And then
But he walks out alone.
So everybody shows, or they show everybody walking out to gorilla position with him.
Yep. They're
And
with
then-
him. They're backstage.
And then they stop at the curtain.
And
Shawn
then
comes out.
Just Shawn.
And then you have the same thing happen with Brett.
Yep. You see the main members of the Hart Foundation, which would be Owen, Bulldog, and Jim Neidhart.
They come walking out, and same thing. Once they get up to the curtain, it's just Brett.
Yeah. So it's very odd to show the entrances this way. It's very odd that suddenly no one's coming out with anyone.
It gave, first off, it for the how do you want to call it, I guess we would say kayfabe, but the fake aura of this,
The scripted reason.
It would make you think that this is a big fight, like it's got the big fight feel kind of thing.
Right. It definitely feels different, and it's definitely giving it almost a more personal, pulling the curtain back. These two people legitimately hate each other. They're about to just go scrap out here.
Which, before the match even starts, they do.
Yeah, they spend about a good 10 minutes just brawling around the ringside into the crowd, which draws out a lot of referees and officials.
In officials, we mean Vince McMahon and like 9 referees and 3 producers, which it's not. Vince McMahon at this point had transitioned from being a ring announcer to being the guy behind the curtain.
I'd say just last month at Bad Blood, Vince was an announcer.
Yeah.
He was their play-by-play guy.
And they had...
We didn't know he owned the company until about now.
Yeah, he moved back to a more behind-the-scenes thing. They had JR and King just doing commentary. And when Vince walks out, it's a little like, huh.
Yeah, it's definitely odd because you don't understand. Wait, why is this guy's a commentator? What's he doing out here?
Right.
It turns out he owns the company. Wait, what? This
Yeah.
guy that's been announcer for about the last 15, 20 years, he owns it? Okay.
So then again, why is he out here?
Yeah. It was odd because they had the on-screen character of Sergeant Slaughter as the on-screen authority role. He was the commissioner.
He was out there,
Right.
but then you had Vince standing over his shoulder for the entire match.
Right. Which, it's odd.
Not knowing the end result of this, it's very odd. So
So they brawl around. Eventually, they're almost about to brawl into the backstage area, and then Vince is like, "Get back, get to the ring." Which, knowing what we know now, I'm wondering if he was afraid they were just going to go too far and just throw the entire match out and ruin the whole plan here.
right. So they get back in the ring, match starts,
Match officially begins like 10 minutes after the brawl starts.
and it's not a bad match.
No, so again, go back to the SummerSlam 91 where we had Brett versus Perfect.
This was about as believable as you could get with two guys who were just beating each other up.
This was two guys using pro wrestling to try to hurt each other, it looked like.
So overall, again, it was a good match. There was a lot of good spots, but you could tell that they were still being professional about the whole thing.
Right. They were definitely doing business. One completely unrelated to this whole thing, something I noticed, I never noticed how great Brett's suplex is. When he goes to suplex someone, he doesn't just pick them up and fall backwards with them. He actually jumps backwards with them. So they're both in the air at the same time.
Yep.
Really cool.
Gives
detail.
it a little bit extra once they both hit the ground kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Because it makes it just look a little bit more impactful.
So we get towards the end of the match,
We sure do.
and Brett's trying to Brett locks in the figure four.
Yep, we got the figure four locked in. Eventually, Sean rolls it over.
And tries to lock in the sharpshooter, which is
Well,
Brett.
it's a second. It's a little bit later. It's not directly right after, but it's shortly thereafter. They tussle back and forth a little bit. Sean goes and locks in the sharpshooter.
And all of a sudden, you have the referee, Earl Hebner, who, from reports, was a very close friend with Brett and promised him nothing screwy is going to happen. Not on my watch.
Ooh, that's gotta hurt. I mean, that's gotta hurt both guys.
Yeah. And Hebner actually says this to Brett before the match. And then after Sean locks in the sharpshooter, Brett's finisher in Brett's hometown, in his
Not hometown, just home country.
home country. Well, wasn't he billed from Toronto?
No, he's billed from Calgary, Alberta, Canada.
That's right.
They were in Montreal, Quebec, Canada.
So
Completely opposite sides of the country.
locks in the sharpshooter,
Go geography.
and the bell rings.
So
Hebner's calling for the bell.
the ref is asking him, like you normally ask someone in submission. Brett's not going crazy about it. Suddenly you hear Rebner turning, saying, "Ring the bell, ring the bell, ring the bell." Kind of stands around for a second as they look a little like, huh? And Brett turns around, tries to hook Sean's ankle, showing like, no, we're not. We're still going here. What's going on? What?
Yep.
At this point, Hebner bails out of the ring and is just gone.
Sean, on the other hand, is throwing a hissy fit next to the ring, and you can actually see him yell, "What the f-, Vince?"
Right. Sean's sitting in the ring with his legs under the bottom rope, kind of just like sitting on the ring itself. Brett is standing. They're both looking at Vince like, what the F was that? Which we will later find out Sean knew the plan the whole time.
Right.
He just decided to act like he didn't know because less chance of him getting killed in Canada.
Right. So Brett's standing there in the ring with his hands on his hips and hawks a massive loogie on Vince's face.
Yeah, we have Sean looking kind of PO'd, walk out, grab the belt, or almost being forced to take the belt, walk to the back, and that's all we have on TV.
And he's being escorted to the back by 2 refs,
And
Triple H.
Triple H came out, grabbed him, and hauled him to the back.
Yep. And that's where the WWE Network ends it.
Yep.
What actually happened is afterwards, Brett destroys the ring.
Yeah.
He takes apart the ring apron. He takes apart the mat.
He stands in the ring and writes in giant letters in the air, WCW.
He flips over a couple announcer tables. Like he starts pulling the barricades down, and the crowd is actually dead silent because they don't know what's happening.
Yeah, it's so bizarre because this guy clearly isn't seeming like he tapped out to anything, and he's just livid, and something's going on. Backstage afterwards, Brett would track down Vince, punch him in the face.
So we're told.
And I believe that's honestly, and then he would leave and go to WCW.
Yeah, and from reports from what Brett had originally said was he didn't want the Clique to have any more power than what they already had backstage.
Yeah, basically saying that Triple H and Shawn Michaels had way too much sway backstage and were using it for the wrong reasons, which, to be fair, Brett had a fairly good amount of sway himself. It was a difference of opinions. I don't know if any of them were really right or wrong, pulling for what they thought was right. I don't know.
And if you go back and watch, there's a full-length Bret Hart documentary on YouTube where it talks about the entire Montreal Screwjob. They have cameras backstage. I believe it's
because they were filming Beyond the Mat, a documentary which wasn't supposed to be about this. They just happened to be there during this time. I believe they were there to film Mick Foley.
Yeah, and they actually Shawn Michaels ends up going into Brett's locker room, and Brett stares him down with dagger eyes and goes, "Did you know?"
Yeah.
Shawn, pleading the fifth, goes, "Nope."
Or I believe it's like, "I swear to God, I didn't know." And this was something that would hang over Brett's head the rest of his career, if not the next decade of his life.
Yeah, because it wasn't until, 2010 when he came back?
I think it was 2006.
Well, he came back for the Hall of Fame ceremony.
Well, he came back and made amends with Shawn first, and then he actually came back and had a little bit of a weird thing.
Yeah, he was the U.S. champ, and he was the GM for a little bit, and...
So yeah, I think that's like 2010, 2012. I think, yeah, you're right there.
But it took a long time for them to even be in the same building.
I mean,
with each other.
I feel like Brett, being who he was and being so close with the business, he's simply a different person after that.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, this would be what kind of breaks Bret Hart.
Yeah, like his spirit was just broken after this. Like,
because
imagine being in a bad relationship and the person just does something like say they cheat on you, but you stick with them. That's always going to kind of be in the back of your head that, like, can I really trust you?
This happened. What if it happens again?
Right. It's like you're always going to, the way you look at them, the way you act is always going to be different. Now imagine that's your career. Now imagine you can only be in that one field of work, and there's two real companies that you can do that with, and the biggest one just did this to you.
Right.
Like, how do you ever trust anyone in that business ever again?
And I would be curious to kind of go back and watch Brett's work ethic in WCW, if it was tainted at all, or if you could notice any differences.
I don't know if you ever really got the opportunity to show it off, just because WCW was so slapdash and sloppy, and they never made Brett a priority, so I don't think Brett ever made them a priority, really.
Yeah.
And one of the famous lines from Triple H in this whole thing, too, was, if he's not going to do business, we'll do business for him.
Yeah, and you end up going back to what Vince ends up saying, the next night on Raw?
I believe it was the night after.
We didn't screw Brett. Brett screwed Brett.
What's your take on that whole thing? Who do you think's in the right? Is anyone in the right?
I don't know if anybody's in the right. I could definitely tell you their hindsight being 2020, it could have gone a lot smoother.
Yeah.
However, I could see Vince's side with, like you said, I'm not going to bet my multi-million-dollar company and my world title on this guy being a good friend.
So this guy has always done right by me. I've always tried to do right by him, but I just screwed him over, and now I'm asking him to do me possibly the biggest favor I could ask of anyone right now.
Right. I don't want to risk that.
That's, you just screwed someone, so your mindset is, I screwed them, they'll screw me. So,
but on the other side of things, I could see Brett's point of view being, I was literally your guy. I would have, if it was up to Brett, he probably would have died in WWE.
Yeah.
But you're going to do something like this to me? Here's the finger. I'm walking out.
Yeah. Honestly, I think this is what happens when people stop communicating.
Yes.
It's when egos get in the way of communication. It's these two. No one was willing to put their ego aside and look at a bigger picture. They could have, if they had willingly done something like this, this story was so good that if you could have gotten Brett to buy into this story to let him save face, which is honestly, I think that's all he really wanted, was he wants to be able to save face in Canada. Like, listen, what if we screw you?
Yeah.
We could just do that, or we could tell you we're going to do that and then do it, and you can roll with it.
Yeah. Like I said, it could have gone a lot smoother, where maybe in a couple of years we get Bret Hart back.
Yeah. I don't think that was by any means the right way to do it, but I don't know if I think any side was necessarily right. I don't think any side was really right. They both acted badly to create this situation. It ended up screwing one side of the one party in this whole thing more than the others. Brett obviously got the worst end of it, but I'm sure this probably contributed to some of Sean's issues going forward for the next couple of months before he had to retire.
Yeah, I mean, Sean and Brett at one point were like best friends.
I don't know if they were ever best friends, but
I mean, if you watch that documentary, it says otherwise.
Did they? So
yeah,
it's quite possible. I mean, think about it. There was so many parallels between them. They both came from tag teams. They both were incredible at their sport. They were both in the business was their life. They weren't just like someone coming in from football or something. Like, they were pretty much born and raised on the business.
Yeah.
It's just their personalities were slightly different, and it was like oil and water.
Yeah, like I said, this is something that effectively changes the landscape of the professional wrestling business.
So we all know the curtain call kind of allowed Stone Cold Steve Austin to really kind of become a thing. What would have happened if Brett leaving suddenly creates a vacuum in the main card?
I don't think we're getting The Rock the way
Well,
that we got him.
We're definitely not getting Stone Cold. He may not have been winning the Rumble to go on to Mania to face the champion there.
Yeah.
Because who knows who they would have put in that spot instead.
I could see them. I don't see them giving us The Rock as quickly or as soon as we got him. I maybe see Undertaker with a longer, bigger run.
Right. Like
going against Brett.
History definitely changed because of this, because it created a vacuum and we needed to do something. Like, it may have ended up with some Brett versus Owen thing again at some point too, because they could have ended up bringing that whole thing back up. And
this event essentially had WCW force WWF's hand to kind of step their game up and stop trying to keep pace, but to actually go in for the takeover.
Yep. All right, so I think that's about everything we got to say on a subject that's been well covered.
Yeah, yeah. This one definitely, guys. Let us know what you think. Twitter, Facebook, the email address. Let us know because this is a big one. This is a big thing in wrestling history.
Yep, possibly the biggest. So.
Yeah.
All right, we will be right back, and we'll wrap this whole thing up and get out of here.
So that was Survivor Series 1997. More specifically, that was the Montreal Screwjob on November 9th. Yeah, that was a lot.
Going into that, I knew it was going to be heavy. I was hoping that we could cover as much of the undercard. I feel like we actually did a pretty good job actually looking at that as well. Because, as we said, that event gets so overshadowed by what happened in the main event, and rightfully so to an extent, but it doesn't mean that what came on the undercard didn't have some merits on its own. So,
yeah. So, Friday, we are going to ROH Global Wars.
right, shortly after the show drops, we will be headed to Buffalo, New York for Ring of Honor / New Japan Pro Wrestling Global Wars.
And they actually have some pretty decent matches set up for this. We're getting, in the main event, Jay Lethal versus Chris Sabin in a non-title match, which has always been good from their stuff in Impact. I can't wait for that one.
Yep. So some perennial X Division standouts there.
Yep. We're also getting a four corners survival match, they're calling it. It's a non-title match, but it features IWGP Junior Heavyweight Champ Kushida versus Jonathan Gresham versus Flip Gordon versus Bushi.
That should be pretty great.
Yeah. We're also getting, and this one I'm really excited for, we're getting the Best Friends, Beretta and Chucky T, against the Briscoes, against Cody and Hangman Page.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited to go see Cody, and I think we're going to try to get there early enough to attend the little pre-event thing.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Because they're doing a bunch of meet and greets, and Cody is one of them, and I am not missing out on that.
All right.
We're also getting the Young Bucks versus LIJ from New Japan, and it's actually Sonata and Naito.
So Naito going into Wrestling Kingdom to face Jericho from a rematch from, I don't know what event they had their match at.
Was it
But-
last Wrestle Kingdom?
No, because last Wrestle
No,
Kingdom,
he faced Jericho came out and messed up Kenny, didn't he?
yeah, it was Jericho versus, it was Alpha versus Omega.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they get their rematch. I'm assuming Jericho will be dropping the belt back to Naito.
I don't know.
I mean, you never really know with New Japan, but
Especially
that would,
with Jericho. in New
especially with
Japan.
Jericho being involved, that would be my guess. He just defended the belt recently against Evil at Power Struggle.
We're also getting Evil, speaking of, versus the ROH television champion Jeff Cobb, which I'm actually really excited for because Jeff Cobb is a monster.
They're actually kind of similar, aren't they? Like, they're two bigger guys that are both pretty good at moving around pretty quickly.
Yeah, that one should be fun. We're also getting Silas Young versus Juice Robinson.
I don't know who Silas Young is, but okay, I know Juice.
Silas Young is essentially the old timer in ROH, and he's I don't think-
Silas, not so young then.
yeah, he's kind of their resident, like hardcore guy, but like man's man kind of thing.
Oh, okay, he's their Steven Regal, I'll say.
Yeah. And then we're also getting TK O'Ryan from the Kingdom against Dalton Castle and the boys.
Okay, I'm awful. I don't know who these are, but okay, sounds fun.
I'm really excited for Dalton Castle because he went to Greece
Oh,
in high school.
okay. Local guy, yeah.
Yeah, we're also supposed to at some point see the ROH Tag Team Champs, Frankie Kazarian and Scorpio Sky, SoCal Uncensored, SCU, against somebody. We don't know yet.
Ooh, still mystery. Interesting.
Yeah.
Then-
I'm guessing the Kingdom because Matt Taven and Vinny Marseglia, I don't know how to say it. are supposed to be showing up.
Okay.
Christopher Daniels and Bully Ray are also supposed to be showing up.
Sweet. I really want to see a Christopher Daniels match. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, should be fun. We'll report back to everybody and kind of let you know what's what.
Yep, I'm sure you can be definitely looking forward to hearing that on next episode, which we say that a lot, but I'm pretty sure we'll follow through on this one.
Yeah, this one will kind of be hard not to follow through on.
All right, so time for plugs.
Facebook at This Week in Wrestling History.
Twitter at WrestleHistPod.
Yep. And email at wrestlinghistorypodcast@gmail.com.
You got it.
You screwed me up. I usually do Twitter and you do the email.
Yeah, no. Gotcha. All right, anything else?
No, I think that's it.
All right, we're history.